Welcome to Port Canaveral, the 2019 State of the Port Address. And it's now my pleasure to introduce John Murray, Captain John Murray, our CEO. He is doing a great job. All 5 commissioners voted last meeting to keep John around for another five years. We want to keep the same direction and keep the same leadership. And John, you're doing a great job. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Micah. Am I wired? There we go. Thank you, Micah. Appreciate the comments. Well, welcome to our 2019 recap State of the Port Address. This is where we're going to take a look at last year, fiscal last year, and a look ahead at the opportunities and challenges ahead of us. I want to thank everyone for coming. Looks like we've got a pretty full house today, and a lot of friends in the audience and some folks I don't know. Look forward to meeting. I'm really pleased to be the CEO at this port. I mean, we've got so many wonderful things going on in Port Canaveral, and really am excited to have you all here today so that we can share what we have going on now, going on next year, and I'll even give you a few tidbits of what might be happening in years beyond. I'd like to start it out a little bit different, and it's kind of a funny question. What is Port Canaveral? Now think about that. What is Port Canaveral? Port Canaveral is home to many small businesses, not only in the port, but businesses around the port. A lot of people depend on Port Canaveral for their personal business, their small business. Port Canaveral is also a community leader. We are a large special district of the state of Florida, and we dominate half the county of Brevard, and we're a very big fixture in Central Florida. So we do have some leadership obligations in Tallahassee to represent this area. We're also a center of recreation, and we are a tourist destination. And we had some recent numbers from the Tourist Development Council that show just how much tourism is dependent on what we do here at the port. We're also a dedicated environmental stewards of our region's ecosystem in which we both work and live. And we're a responsible community partner and a valued economic engine for Central Florida, the Space Coast, and the state of Florida. We're also a port. We fulfill the needs of international commerce in Central Florida. And that's a very important part of what we do. For both cruise, cargo, we facilitate international and domestic commerce by water. It's a big responsibility, and it takes an entire port team and its community members to make it happen. One thing I want to talk about is we recently, every few years, we do an economic impact analysis. And the last one we had done was in 2016. And we just had one completed that based everything on our 2018 numbers. And it's the BREA, we call it BREA all the time, but it's the Business Research and Economic Advisors. It's an international group. They do this for ports and businesses throughout the world. We just had ours completed about a month ago. The results are in a short recap on your tables. You've got it. You don't need to read it now because I'm going to go through some of these items with you. First off, what is Port Canaveral to the state of Florida? Well, our net impact is $3.9 billion impact to Florida. When we last did this in 2016, which was based on 13 and 14 results, it was $2.1 billion. That just shows the impact that we're having with the growth that we're experiencing at the port. 32,000 plus jobs in the state of Florida are dependent on us. $1.3 billion in wage income. And $107 million in taxes that come to local taxes, sales, use, excise, and other taxes. When you break that down into Central Florida, we have a huge economic impact in the region, which extends all the way across into the central part of the state. Almost half of our number is in Central Florida. So it's a lot of workers, 17,000. 729 million in wages. We are a big player. And then when you get to a local level, there's about 13,000 people here that are depending on our existence. And that's a big number because that has a trickle-down effect of the number of people that receive other benefits besides those direct employed people. We also have, if you look at the economic impact, $1.3 billion in tourism as a result of what we do here, mostly our cruise business. Now, if you look at it in different ways, there's some things we've taken out of this, so if you try to add the numbers up, it's not going to be perfect, but what we wanted to do is break down the economic impact. The largest component, of course, is the cruise business, 23,000 jobs. Then we go to the cargo side, it drops quickly to 800 million, 4,600 jobs. Real estate, which is largely dependent on the real estate business we do in the port, and then our recreational business. That's a little bit of a breakdown. Now, before you start the next slide, I just wanted to say that we're having a little bit different format this year. And instead of listening to me for an hour ramble and go through a bunch of PowerPoint slides, we're going to do a little bit of a video piece rolled in, and we're going to bring the employees and the port partners and all into some of these videos so that you can see exactly what we do here at Port Canaveral. And first off, I'd like to take a look at the year we just finished, 2019.
This year we were thrilled to be named World's Best Cruise Port by Global Traveler magazine, which is a monthly top-rated business and leisure magazine that's read by everyone in the industry. We were picked because of the amount of service that we give, the new cruise facilities that we've created over the years, and our total dedication to total quality management and customer service.
In 2019, Port Canaveral was recertified in the International Green Marine Program. Green Marine is an environmental certification program. It looks at your existing programs and ways to improve them. We are one of 2 ports in Florida that are certified in the program. The sand bypass project that was completed in May and June of 2019 moved about 1.4 million cubic yards of sand from north of the inlet, placed it down on the beaches of Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach. It cost about $18 million. That was mostly paid for by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We are the local sponsor for that project. The Corps is our partner. And the emphasis is to restore the beaches back to pre-inlet levels going back to 1951.
Earlier this year, we were able to get a state grant to help us purchase a mobile harbor crane here in the port. It's the largest mobile harbor crane of its kind in the United States, and it gives us versatility to handle just about any type of cargo that we need to handle here at the port.
North Cargo Berth 8 is constructed in mind as a multi-purpose berth for heavy lift cargoes as well as space components. Once it's completed, it will be able to accommodate vessels up to 850 feet in length.
Cruise Terminal 3 is the largest program that Port Canaveral has ever undertaken at approximately $163 million. It's a 180,000 square foot terminal, and it's being built for Carnival Cruise Line's largest vessel that they've ever built, the Mardi Gras, which is their new XL class. It's a very exciting project for us.
To Admiral Justice and the rest of the elected port commissioners here, thank you for your leadership, but even more so, for the steadfast and unwavering attention that you give to the stability of this port economically, environmentally, and socially for all of the port's stakeholders.
The Royal Homecoming at Port Canaveral was another amazing day in 2019. You had Royal Caribbean's 2 magnificent ships, the Harmony of the Seas and the Mariner of the Seas, arrive on the same day. And we had a wonderful day of activities, including our whole community that came out to Jetty Park, waved signs, and waved both ships as they left the port. Royal Caribbean's management was extremely thrilled and satisfied with the program that we put on at Port Canaveral, and it was an amazing day.
Symphony of the Seas is the largest cruise vessel in the entire world, and its first call to the U.S. was at Port Canaveral. And the reason that Royal Caribbean decided to bring the vessel to Port Canaveral first was that they knew that we had the experience to process passengers in a timely and efficient manner. We've had a number of 6 cruise ship days up until this point, and we have some planned for the future as well. What that normally entails is 5 home-ported vessels and 1 port-of-call vessel berthed at a cargo dock, which in this case is North Cargo Berth 5. We've never had a cruise vessel perform passenger operations at a cargo berth before, so we essentially had to start with a brand new concept of operation.
Well, when we have 6 cruise ships in the port, that can be up to 35 to 40,000 passengers. So it takes multiple levels of cooperation between us and the local ground transportation community, along with the cruise lines, to get a day like that completed successfully.
Welcome to Port Canaveral. I'm your porter. I'm going to take care of your luggage, make sure it gets safe to your room. It's a collaborative effort between not only my staff, but the ground transportation staff, harbor masters, security, the sheriff's department. We all come together, we make a plan, we decide what we're going to do, where we're going to deploy people, how we'll move passengers around, how we get them safely from the ship to their transportation shuttle. It can be a little bit crazy sometimes, but for the most part, we've been doing this for a while and it seems to work out very well.
6 ship days here at the port, my team collaborates to make sure that we have enough staff coverage for the day. Our number one goal is to ensure the passengers debark and embark the cruise ship safe and happy.
The port wayfinding and signage project include the replacement of a majority of the signs throughout Port Canaveral and included 2 exit numbers off 528 instead of 401, and also included designating 2 different colors for the north and the south side of the port. It helps passengers and guests reach their destination more easily in order to find their destinations, and we've received multiple comments with positive feedback.
The Northside Roadway Improvement Project added an extension of the exit lane from State Road 401. We also added an additional lane going to CT8 and CT10, which allow us to identify each lane going to each terminal. We also added some safety features in front of Cruise Terminal 6 for the safety of passengers.
Our recreational community here is very important to us as a Port Authority, and we want to accommodate them as best we can. We have a huge public boat launch with ample parking space. On real busy days, we have to sometimes park them elsewhere. When we do that, we provide the transportation to and from the alternative sites, and we did it a couple times this past year, and it worked out great.
As Hurricane Dorian approached, we worked with all the vessel operators and owners to ensure that their vessels were safely removed because Port Canaveral is not a safe haven. Once Dorian passed, we worked with our partners here in Port Canaveral, Canaveral Fire Rescue, United States Coast Guard, and United States Customs and Border Protection to ensure that we could get our cruise vessels into port and safely unloaded, as well as getting our fuel tankers moving to those needed gas stations along Central Florida.
I have to say that's great for 2 reasons. One, you get to see the people that have been involved in making these projects a real thing, and the other part is I didn't have to speak for the last 10 minutes, so I got to rest. Jumping right ahead, let's go to the first slide on the year-end summary. Our fiscal year 2019 versus 18, we had a great year. We seem to be on track to have another great year this coming year, and of course, all of the great numbers and all we produce when we say we got another record operating revenue, that's not profit. And we invest that money that we do make in profit right back into our infrastructure. And if we didn't, this would be a very different place. So it's very important. The good news is we made what we said we were going to do. That's appeases all of our bondholders and banks that watch what we do every day, so that's good. We had record cruise revenue, up 5% from prior year. Cargo revenue was down slightly, but our cargo tonnage was up, and that's largely due to the mix of cargo. Cruise passengers are all the same. It's a number. When you're dealing with cargo, you might have bulk cargo, which has a lower rate than a more refined or finished product, which might move at a higher rate. So sometimes the tonnage is up and the revenue's down, and vice versa, depending on the type of cargo. So that's all related to mix. Just touch on a few things on cruise, and then we'll get into some more details. Cruise, we did 4.6 million multi-day passengers in 2019. That's also a new record for us. The Harmony of the Seas replaced the Oasis of the Seas. And you remember when the Oasis came, that was the first time Royal Caribbean sent one of their largest ships to our port. And I think at the time they were concerned whether they would fill it. Well, it was such a success that they've replaced it with the Harmony of the Seas, which is the 3rd newest ship in their fleet right now, and it's the second newest in the Atlantic. And we're very, very happy to have that ship here. The Oasis had to go off to other pastures, but there's good news. The Oasis will be back in the spring. She'll be home ported in New York, and Port Canaveral will be a port of call. So we're going to have 2 of these large ships calling the port each week through the summer. So that's exciting. Mariner of the Seas replaced the Enchantment of the Seas, another significant upgrade on the ship size. The Mariner first home ported here in Port Canaveral back in 2002, 2003. Don't quote me on the exact date. But she had a very large refurbishment, and came to Port Canaveral, and that ship is sailing full just about every time she goes out of here. She's going to Perfect Day at Coco Cay down in the Bahamas. It's a new private island for Royal Caribbean, and they're getting a lot of success with what we're doing out of Port Canaveral, so we're really excited about that. Carnival Elation came in to replace the Carnival Sunshine this year. Carnival Elation is a slightly smaller ship, but it sails with more frequency, so there's actually more passengers moving through the port on that ship than there were on the Sunshine. So that's another positive for us. And then in 2 weeks, we've got the Norwegian, this year we had the Norwegian Escape calling. That's another, they call Breakaway Plus size ship at Norwegian Cruise Line. She's been calling here through the summer months. And now in 2 weeks, we have the Norwegian Breakaway coming here for the winter season. The Norwegian Breakaway is a beautiful ship. You may have seen it here on port of calls in years past. The vessel has been home ported in New York. She'll be home ported in Port Canaveral through the winter season. So it would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about Cruise Terminal 3. You know, it's hard to believe, any of you that have been here for the last 6 months, if you've watched the project progress. The first panel went up in May of 2019, and if you drive out there now, there's a whole building, almost a whole parking garage. They're putting in the air conditioning. This building is going to be operational at the end of May, and at this point in time, everything's on track to meet that deadline. We're really excited about that. Carnival will be moving into it as soon as it's completed, and will operate their existing services out of there until the Mardi Gras arrives in October of this year. We have some big events planned that I'm sure many of you will be able to attend. One is going to be the grand opening planned in mid-July of the terminal. So we'll get it up, we'll get it running, and then we'll have our grand opening celebration. And then when the Mardi Gras arrives, she'll be here for 2 days on her maiden call. So we're really excited. And just as a reminder, the Mardi Gras is the first LNG-powered cruise ship that will be calling a North American port. So we're really excited to have her home ported here in Port Canaveral. Also last year, we signed a new 20-year agreement with Disney Cruise Line. They will ultimately or eventually increase their home-ported ships in Port Canaveral to 3 on a year-round basis. As such, 2 of those ships that we know of will be powered by LNG, and one of the exciting things with this new contract with Disney is that we're going to be refurbishing Cruise Terminal 8 and the cruise terminal you're in today. So it's not going to look like this a year from now. It'll be a jointly shared terminal, Cruise Terminal 10, with other parties, not just Disney, but we're looking at some exciting electronic ways to make the port like Disney when Disney's here and like NCL when NCL is here. So it's really exciting what we can do with new technology. So the team's working hard on that one, and we're really excited. And I already talked about the breakaway. So before we start the video, I'd just like to say that, you know, what happens here doesn't happen by accident. There's a lot of people that work very closely with our cruise line partners. You sometimes don't think of the relationship, and I'm going to talk about that again at the end of the presentation, but our relationships are very important to what we do here. And we invited some of our cruise line executives to speak about why they think Port Canaveral is important. So let's go ahead and roll with that.
Royal Caribbean visits over 400 ports around the world. We're the largest single cruise line on the planet. Port Canaveral is a key port for Royal Caribbean. It's a turnaround port, it's a home port. It's a home port for our big Oasis class ships. Each one of those ships is a $1.5 billion investment. I think that's testimony to how we view Port Canaveral. It's also in Florida, which is a key market for Royal Caribbean, and it also acts as a big regional market. So we're big fans of Port Canaveral, and it plays an important part of our overall global portfolio.
Port Canaveral offers convenient airlift from all over and is easily accessible for those who choose to drive to their Carnival Cruise Line vacation. It's also one of the most popular and fastest growing home ports, so we are delighted to be bringing our exciting, highly anticipated ship to the Space Coast in 2020.
We have a mutual commitment to excellence in delivering the best possible cruise experience for families. The port team's commitment to innovation and their strategic vision for the future are qualities we share, and they're especially important as Disney expands its presence at Port Canaveral over the next several years. We are pleased to bring our new class of ships to Port Canaveral and look forward to strengthening our long-standing relationship.
Our expectations are all about partnership. We look for a partner who's going to be there on the good days, on the rainy days, and on the days where you're thrown a curveball. And Port Canaveral are all of those things. They have a fantastic team. They listen to what we need, and when we need something to happen on the day, they're right there beside us.
Victory Casino Cruises has been operating now a little over 8 years, and we're getting ready to celebrate our 3 millionth passenger. And Port Canaveral has provided us with the premier location throughout the entire United States to do this type of business.
American Cruise Aid Logistics is in its 15th year of operations presently. We started as a very small company, basically providing last mile delivery services to Disney Cruise Line. Since then, we have grown to a client base of all the major cruise lines in Port Canaveral and many other ports in the United States.
Last year, 2018, we broke a new record of multi-day passengers of almost 4.6 million. We expect this year those numbers to increase even more with the addition of the brand new Carnival Mardi Gras and the other additional ships that are coming on to Port Canaveral. Our future looks bright and will be continuing to grow for many years to come.
That's a testament to Port Canaveral and everybody that works here, be it in the port, ground transportation, agency services, whatever. I mean, we've got 4 CEOs there that just told us what we're all about, and I think that's great. Great message. Okay, moving forward, let's talk just a little bit about cargo. Central Florida continues to drive the growth of cargo through the port. We had 361 ship calls last year versus 491 the year before. As I said, some of that was due to mix. Tonnage is up 1.1%. We did $9.3 million in revenue, which is still very good. It was down a little bit from the prior year, largely driven by some spot business or one-off business, I should say, that we had with the rebuilding of Puerto Rico after Maria. There was a lot of federal government cargo that was moving through the port. And of course, when that was over, it was over. So that was in our numbers last year. If you look at just the numbers, the lumber's been up. You see lumber all over the port. It continues to come, and we were just at a recent break bulk conference and met with our customers there, and they're excited for what we do here, and we're going to be seeing more lumber coming through the port. So I think this is a good thing for our port. There's only a handful of ports in the United States that are receiving imported lumber, and we just happen to be one of them. So that's a great story. Slag is up 16.6% from last year. Slag is on the north side of our port. It's used in construction industry. It's mixed with cement in various proportions, and it's a great product that results from the steel manufacturing. And it's a residue product that I don't know how somebody figured out it would be a great mixture with cement, and it has self-healing tendencies that cement doesn't have. So when it cracks, it fixes itself, which is why it's used so widely in construction right now. So that volume I expect to continue to increase because their volume in business has been very, very strong. Salt is up, and that's largely since they converted and now are doing table salts and consumables instead of just the industrial salts. And petroleum has been more or less flat. There's a lot of reasons why our petroleum goes up and down, and it's through external factors that really have nothing to do with what we do here in Port Canaveral. We've got great terminal operators here, but oil is an international market, and sometimes it gets moved to other ports just because the pricing is different. So it's not something that we have direct control over, but what we do have direct control over, we do and do well. So with that, I'm going to jump into a cargo video and let our folks tell you what's going on around the port.
With the addition of John Murray, the port director of the Port Authority, he's been very pro-cargo and attending with ASI personnel, myself and his cargo personnel. We've been able to attend conferences and get some more business to Canaveral based on new infrastructure that the port's done, that we've done, and it's been a good team for growth of cargo in Canaveral in conjunction with the Port Authority.
Well, here at Seaport Canaveral, we've done a significant investment in partnering with the port as well. Back over 10 years ago, we built this facility to be able to enable and facilitate our suppliers' products going to the Central Florida market, which is a growing market.
In January, we took possession of our new mobile harbor crane, which is considered the largest in the United States. This mobile harbor crane gives us the flexibility to handle cargoes such as bulk, break bulk project cargoes, which includes rocket boosters, as well as space components.
Our mobile harbor crane is German built. She's mainly hydraulic. She weighs 1.4 million pounds. We're able to move her from pier to pier on our north side, and her capabilities in cargo, she's able to handle containers 18 wide on a vessel. We're able to handle space equipment. We're able to handle generators, boats and yachts, lumber, break bulk items, and we find her with very good use here in our port.
With larger vessels calling on Port Canaveral, North Cargo Piers 3 and 4 have become functionally obsolete due to their outdated pier designs. By reconstructing these piers, this will allow us to provide support to our current and future cargo partners.
The North Cargo Berth 8 is our last unimproved area within the port, and over the last year and in the future we are working towards improving that. Over this last year we built 900-foot bulkhead wall, and we are currently undergoing the upland paving portion, which is about 4 acres of heavy-duty pavement, and in addition to a 120-foot pier extension, which will maximize the use of that area for port cargo tenants.
Now, I'll add one little tidbit there that's not in the video, and it's not any of my slides or anything, but the Falcon 9, which successfully landed on the Of Course I Still Love You on Monday, will be coming back later this week, and our mobile harbor crane will be lifting it off the drone ship back onto the dock. So that'll be the first time we actually use our crane for SpaceX, so we're excited about that. So we'll have a camera crew out there, I'm sure. One thing I do want to talk about, and I mentioned it last year and I'll mention it every year that I stand up here, is that we couldn't do what we do without strategic partnerships, without the support of our elected officials, both in the House, the Senate, the State House and Senate, all the subcommittees, all of the partners that are here today for the state of the port. Thank you for everything that you do for us. We couldn't do it without your help. And in addition to that, we have to foster and continue to foster strong relationships with every federal and state agency that has any oversight over our operations. And there's more than are listed on this sheet here, but I thought it was important to just stress that point every year. We wouldn't get one grant dollar if we didn't have people out there fighting for us. And it's important that we cultivate those relationships and keep them going. Just in the past year, Sand Bypass Project, that was an $18 million project. That's not a port project, by the way, but that was $18 million to move the sand from the north jetty to the southern part. It was something that fell by the wayside in Washington for whatever reason in the budget hysteria that seems to go on there on a regular basis, and the Corps fell behind on their obligation, which was a legal obligation due to a court settlement to do the sand bypass every 5 years. Well, it went almost 8 years, I guess, and they still hadn't done anything, and we ended up bringing the issue up because we have a very good relationship with the Army Corps, just bases our operations in the port, and we were able to help push that along so that it was fully funded, and I'm happy to say it was funded and completed this year, and that's the largest bypass project done to date. We also had another $1.5 million worth of harbor maintenance that's just dredging to our standard depth in the port. An exciting feature we have coming online here soon is a new fireboat for Chief Dave Sargent. He likes boats. I don't know why a fireman likes boats, but he likes boats. And we've got a new fireboat coming, which is specific for LNG firefighting. Liquefied natural gas is a gas. It's a liquid and a gas eventually, but it doesn't respond to the same extinguishing agents that you would use on a normal oil or electrical fire. You have to use a dry chemical, therefore you need a special type of fire extinguishing hardware. So we have a new fireboat. We had the great support from our local delegation to get us a special appropriation from the state of Florida of $1.5 million. We also ended up with a Federal Emergency Management Association grant from Port Security for another $1 million. So we have a total of $2.5 million matching funds on a boat that's going to cost us $4.8 million. So we will have that boat in the third quarter of next year, but it's great to have the support of everyone to help us get that funding so that we can put that funding toward the boat and use our assets to come back and redo cruise terminals and keep the big engine running, so to speak. We also had other miscellaneous federal and state grants for about another $900,000. And then normally through the state, there are several programs. There's the FSTED, the SIS, there's different special programs that generally managed through Florida Department of Transportation. And we were successful in achieving $15.6 million for infrastructure upgrades last year from the state of Florida. You know, environmental stewardship, I can't say enough about. We take it seriously. You know, this port it's clean. We do everything we can to be environmentally sensitive. We respect the commitment and the responsibility for us to lead in this area. A couple of things, you know, we talk about our keeper of our beautiful partnerships and local partnerships. There's some of those listed there. I'm not going to get into all of the detail. We have plenty of that on our website about what we do, and there's a lot more than that's on this slide. We recertified Green Marine. You heard Bob Musser mention that earlier. And then there's one thing I just want to mention, just because I think it's interesting. And it's very impactful to the community, but I don't think the community really knows anything about this. But you see that $4.6 million for stormwater collection and nutrient reduction for a vault system at the new Cruise Terminal 3. Normally you have to have water retention whenever you put down concrete. You have to have a pond to capture the stormwater. Because of our boat ramps and our excess boat ramp parking and everything that we do out in that part of the port, we couldn't put a pond in out there. So we came up with another innovative solution, which is an underwater vault system that holds the stormwater. And all of the construction and everything everyone's had to endure out there at those ramps this summer, a lot of it's been to put that vault system in. So the old lot that was a dirt lot on the overflow for the boat ramp parking is now all paved, and that's because underneath it you've got a vault system for the water. That cost us an extra $4.6 million. It would have cost about $800,000 to build a pond. So that shows, you know, some of the commitment we have, not just to environmental stewardship, but also to the community to make sure that we live up to the commitments we've made on the recreational side. Last thing I want to talk about is International Maritime Organization, IMO 2020. What does that mean? The IMO is an agency of the United Nations, and it's promulgated regulations regarding ships and air emission standards. And those of you that know anything about ships know that the oil that they burn is the last part of a cracking process. It's so thick and heavy that you have to heat it just to move it through a pipe. It's bad oil. And most of it's full of sulfur. That's what ends up in the residual fuel is a high sulfur content. And that sulfur content, when it's burned in a marine diesel engine, puts up noxious gases into the atmosphere. And the IMO came to realize that they had to do something 10 years ago. And over the years, they've had progressive changes on the sulfur content that's permissible in the marine engine. And they continue to make the standard lower and lower to the point in 2020, it's the lowest standard such that the black oil cannot be burned unless the ship has a specialized, what they call, scrubber system on it, which takes all the exhaust gas, runs it through a filter system, and then they have a wastewater that's got sulfur in it that has to be disposed of. And how they do that is still up for debate. There's closed systems that they keep the water on the ship and discharge ashore, and then there's open systems where they discharge into the ocean. We don't think that's a great long-term solution. Other alternatives is that the ships will start burning gas oil, which is marine diesel. It's a very lightweight diesel, and it doesn't have any sulfur in it, so it meets the requirements. The problem is it's about 40% more expensive than the black oil that they're used to burning. So all of the cruise lines, cargo lines, every ship in the world has to comply on January 1, 2020 with some solution. A third solution is liquefied natural gas, which is why we're talking LNG. LNG burns clean. It does not have the same emissions that you have with the black oil, and you don't have the issues that you have with the scrubber systems. So that's the rationale for the LNG. Those rules go into effect on January 1st. As such, the dynamics in our port are going to change a little bit. And you know, for those of you that work here, know we have a pipeline on the north side that feeds most of our cruise ships, and we have one cruise ship that gets fueled by barge All that's going to change because the pipeline is going to be switched over to a different grade of fuel, which means different barges will be supplying different fuels to different ships, and it's all going to happen very quickly. So in the next 3 weeks, there'll be some changes here in the port, and by January 1st, Port Canaveral and its customers will all be compliant with the new regulation. So with that, I thought we might take a look of what's going to happen in 2020, and as the format has gone so far, I'm going to let somebody else tell the story instead of me.
We're thrilled to be named the first North American cruise port to have LNG service at Port Canaveral. We're going to have at least 3 LNG ships here. We hope to expand that and add additional LNG ships and become the LNG port of the future.
So in 2020, the first cruise ships in the United States will be fueled on LNG here at Port Canaveral. With that, we have started learning everything we need to know about LNG and training all of our personnel on LNG, including the local fire departments in the area. With that also, we're purchasing additional equipment to augment what we already have in place to make sure that we are prepared for anything.
We started this project 3 years ago. This requires a lot of coordination with the agencies that regulate that activity, and we've been working closely with them throughout that entire period. One of the exciting elements of the port's preparation is the expansion of the Port Canaveral Firefighting Academy to include LNG and firefighting capability of LNG.
We've currently expanded the Fire Training Academy to include LNG training. This particular type of training is being done with real LNG in a realistic environment. We'll be training cruise ship personnel along with mariners that will be using this fuel and fueling these vessels, and we are training these people from all over the country. This is great for us as well as them because our firefighters are getting to see this done on a weekly basis and use this particular fuel, which is pretty unheard of and it's leading the way.
One of the companies that's going to be providing LNG is LNG, and they're building a articulated tug and barge in Pascagoula, Mississippi called the Q4000. That'll bring in 4,000 cubic meters of LNG for the Carnival Mardi Gras.
So we were just awarded a grant from the state of Florida as well as an additional grant from the FEMA to purchase a fireboat, and the Canaveral Port Authority is also matching that grant. We will be purchasing approximately a $4.8 million fireboat. This particular boat is equipped with dry chemical agent, and that agent is specific to LNG.
It's a great asset that will serve the port here long into the future.
One of the items that I'm most proud of are the port partnerships with many organizations throughout the county and the region, such as the Sea Turtle Preservation Society, Keep Brevard Beautiful, Marine Resources Council, the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, and others that we work with on not only special events, but also hosting volunteer events for folks to get out on coastal cleanups and get out and give back to the community. And it's something that I believe in personally, and the port has taken a strong lead in out here in our port community.
What we're excited about with the Recreation Department is the development of a new Jetty Park campground store. What that'll allow us to do is deliver further wonderful guest service for the campers that come visit us during a very busy time.
North Cargo Berth 8 has been designed to handle heavy lift cargo with up to 2,000 pounds per square foot capacity. The southern wall was designed to be removable in order to accommodate the pier extension, and then that pier extension will also accommodate an even further 180-foot pier extension down the road.
North Cargo Berth 3 and 4 represent over a $70 million project. We are focusing currently on North Cargo Berth 3 at about $37 million. We're currently and actively pursuing federal grant, state grant funding, and other funding mechanisms for those projects. And we're very optimistic that we'll be able to begin construction on North Cargo Berth 3 by the end of the year 2020.
In 2020, cybersecurity is going to be one of our most important technology initiatives that we have. But it's not just technology, it's really training our employees is going to be one of the main focuses. So our employees are the greatest target that we have, and equipping them with the right tools to help us defend against attacks will be number one. In addition, we're looking at utilizing facial recognition technologies to clear passengers through the cruise terminals. We've already started rolling those technologies out at Cruise Terminal 1 and have been extremely successful. Customers are clearing in record times, and it's improving customer experience.
Cruise Terminal 3 is approximately 188,000 square feet. It has 1,700 seats, and it's going to have a second floor entranceway, which has a covered walkway that's going to be going from the parking garage directly into the cruise terminal.
We started to plan this project several years ago. In fact, back in 2016 was the date of our first meetings where we began to contemplate Terminal 3. We knew that there would be many different components, many different teams, many different entities involved in CT3, and all along the way we've seen some fantastic partners have brought their best game to the table. We really believe it's going to be a fantastic success for Port Canaveral and for Carnival Cruise Line as well.
Cruise Terminal 3 parking garage is approximately 1,800 parking spaces. It has an elevated walkway that's going to be going from the third floor of the parking garage to the second floor entranceway to the terminal.
The project's being built by a couple of very important local partners. Ivy's Construction is building the terminal for us. They've teamed with Finfrock to do the design-build parking garage. And on the marine side, we have Rush Marine, and they're building that $38.6 million marine project for us. It's a very exciting project. It represents a substantial amount of temporary construction jobs, and we're very excited to be a part of that.
Cruise Terminal 3 marine berth is approximately 1,300 feet long. It was designed by Jacobs Engineering with partners with Atkins. Rush Marine is the contractor.
We're very excited about the Cruise Terminal 8 and 10 project for Disney Cruise Line. Disney Cruise Line has been a fantastic partner for the port for many years. And we're excited that they're re-cementing that partnership for years in the future as well. We'll be spending about $50 million on the Cruise Terminal 8 and 10 project through the terminals, a new passenger boarding bridge, and the marine works on that project. We'll be adding a new baggage processing facility. We'll be expanding the entrance area where people get picked up and dropped off. We'll be renovating parts of the interior of that terminal. We will be maintaining that same existing Disney vernacular that the terminal currently has, but we'll be providing substantially more seating capacity for the guest experience.
In 2020, the port will have a lot of operational activities, but the safety of the community, the public, and our guests are our highest priority.
We've got a lot of great plans for 2020. We're looking forward to some exciting initiatives and challenges, and we've got wonderful men and women who are working for Canaveral Port Authority and are dedicated to use their expertise, experience, and talents to provide the very best internal and external service for our guests.
So we've got a lot going on in the coming year. And it's a stepping stone to the following year, because in 21 and 22 we have a lot of other exciting things happening with new ships coming and new terminals eventually, and there's a lot to be thankful for here in Port Canaveral. So what are the challenges? Well, still, near-term priority, we still have the highest demand for bulkhead space in the port's history, and we've done some things this year that were recapped. One that wasn't recapped, we took back the last piece of bulkhead that was controlled by a tenant in the port, where we can have some control over it. We did that in September, I believe. We also finished North Cargo Berth 8, and the uplands are being done now. But we continue to have people coming in saying, hey, I got a new operation starting, mostly space industry at this point, plus the cruise lines, it's not just space, that we want to do this, we want to do that, how do we do it? It's a challenge. Our footprint is finite. We've now developed all of the bulkhead that we have in the port, so it's a matter of moving the cards around to see how we can accommodate everyone. Just this past week, Commissioner Justice and I met with another space entity that came in, and they want to bring 2 more boats to the port, and we're like, where are we going to put all these things? So it remains a challenge, and it will remain a challenge, and balancing berth utilization with demand means we may have to start thinking outside the dots on how we can maybe use cruise terminals when the cruise ships aren't there for other activities, et cetera. So it's going to be a challenge for us in the future, and I don't look at that going away. One thing I do want to also say, there we go. I say this every major speech that we have here at the port, that I like to say the way forward, and I'm trying to keep this slide up there. You've seen it before, you'll see it again, maybe 5 more times. we want to keep measured and financially responsible development here in the port. And strong organic growth through sound business planning. I mean, we like to look at everything before we do it and say, does this make sense? Is this something the port should be doing? Does it bring a return for the port, the community, whatever? We have to think all these things through and not just charge forward and do things hoping that something happens. We need to add value and provide support to our port business partners. Although Brian's not here today, I do appreciate his comments. You know, one of the things that I like to do is work with all of our partners, cruise and cargo, and how can we help your business? You know, the last thing I want any external source to see is the port and the cargo tenant going head to head on something. We should be working together, holding hands and working to achieve the same results. So, you know, we all rise together. And then obviously we had a great foundation that built this port, and we need to protect that foundation and position the port to meet its future demands. A couple of things I want to say here toward the end. First off, I want to thank all the actors and actresses that gave up some time to participate in this video. And just so everyone's clear, a little known statistic that I had Amanda calculate for me, that 72% of the employees of Port Canaveral don't work normal 9-to-5 business hours. They're all working different hours, and that's because of the type of business we're in. We've got cruise ships on weekends. We've got contractors that start work at 6 in the morning. So we have people that are working, 72% don't work traditional business hours. And I thought that was a much larger number than I thought. And the reason I bring that up is we had a group photo, but that's all we could come up with because people were either off, they were working. So that's probably about 30% of our total workforce here in the port. So I thank the actresses, I thank the actors. I want to thank our communications team, who I think did a great job with this video. I didn't have to do anything with it at all. It was great. And Steve and Eva, Diane, you guys all did a great job. So thanks on that. And lastly, I want to thank all of our port partners for everything you do here. And I also want to thank all of the Port Canaveral employees that surround me. And I couldn't be up here having a great day like I am if I didn't have all those strong people supporting me. So thank you to all of you. And then there's one last thing. In a world of Facebook, Instagram, email, text, we all tend to lose sight of personal relationships. I'll ask my daughter, when did you last talk to somebody? Oh, I talked to them yesterday. Oh, was it by text, email, phone? Did you talk to them? No, I texted. Well, that's not really talking to somebody. And relationships are so important in this business. And it's key that you maintain those relationships to keep the business going forward. And while we use the Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all of the social media, because that's so good to promote our business, nothing beats sitting down with a guy like Bert Sweats from Disney sitting in the front row here, who actually came over from Celebration for this. Thank you, Bert. And Carlos Estrada from Carnival drove up from Miami, or flew up, I'm not sure which, but he's here and supporting us. And these are relationships that are very important. So I want to go back with one last video on how these relationships really work. And let's roll that last one, please.
So, I'm a really busy guy. I'm like running the world's largest cruise line. I'm crazy busy. I mean, I'm so busy, it's unbelievable. I've got no time. And then my assistant, Eileen, said, Bobby G called. And I'm like, oh my God, Bobby G called? Bobby G from Port Canaveral? She goes, Bobby G. So I stopped everything I was doing to receive the message that Bobby G wanted me to make this video. And I have cleared my whole day just to make sure it's just right for Bobby G. So Bobby G, thank you.
Thought that was a great way to end it. Thank you for coming, and we'll be around. Unless you want to see that again. We can do it. So, thanks.